What happened when the Empire had made their own Jedi Order? Greetings Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. We've been expecting your arrival. For several decades after Palpatine's death, the remnants of the Empire scrambled to find some semblance of cohesion. They tried several times to return and to strike back at the New Republic, and each faction ultimately failed and was destroyed, further weakening all that was left of the once grand Empire. But there was one remnant which remained under the control of a more benevolent man, a man who believed that the structure of the Empire was good, but it was simply corrupted by evil men, and this man wished to return it to this glorious state. During the Yuuzhan Vong War, the remnant ended up aligning with the New Republic to drive away their mutual enemy, and when the dust eventually settled, it was this Imperial remnant that decided it was their best interest to invite the Jedi Order's involvement into creating their entire offshoot of the Empire, with the Jedi Order's help. Their involvement in creating a faction of light side force-based wielders in order to guide the regime and keep it in check. They became the Imperial Knights, the Jedi of the Empire. So today, join us as we open a holocron into the distant future of the galaxy and examine the white-bladed paladins of law and order. We want to look at their skill, their organization, their perspective on the Force, but as the Order of Imperial Knights grows, so too does ours, and we sense that there are many here who wish to be a part of it. If you want to join our community of lore lovers and seekers of Legends knowledge, simply force crush that subscribe button and take the oath. Now, let us begin. The Imperial Knights got their start from the Jedi influence, but they themselves are importantly not Jedi. This all began with a man by the name of Jagged Fel. He was the head of state of the Imperial Remnant. He was a good-hearted man with staunch principles and a deep desire to atone for the actions of Palpatine. He had developed a strong relationship with Jaina Solo and suggested to her that she and the new Jedi should establish some sort of Jedi presence from within the Empire, believing that this would fix all of the Empire's problems. A pretty brilliant move. Much later on though, Fel and Solo would end up getting married, which led to Fel becoming the next emperor. This would begin his entire bloodline of the Fel dynasty, and transforming what was once the remnant of the Empire into the Fel Empire. Make no mistake, the Fel Empire was a full departure and an evolution of what Palpatine had established. No longer were they allied with the dark side of the Force or the Sith philosophy. They wanted to ensure that that remained a permanent change though. Because of this, at an unknown point in time, Emperor Fel would follow through with a plan that he had explained to Jaina, and he implemented the Imperial Knights, creating a Jedi-like presence within his own empire. It was said that the first loyalty of the Knights was not to the Force, but was to the Empire, to the Emperor of the Fel Empire. Their purpose and duty was to the Emperor alone, and they served primarily as his bodyguards, much in the same way that Palpatine's Royal Guard functioned, and in that same spirit, the Imperial Knights also wore red armor and cloaks. But there were many things that separated them from the Royal Guard of yesteryear. For armament, each Imperial Knight carried a standardized lightsaber that produced a white lightsaber blade. This symbolized the Order's unity, as well as the fact that each member was less than the organization that they served, but still a part of it. The white crystals within their weapons were crafted synthetically by using knowledge from Palpatine's own written works in the Book of Anger. However, the Imperial Knights did not use the dark side while crafting these crystals. They simply made the crystal much in the same way that Luke did on Tatooine with his own emerald blade. Palpatine did leave something good behind after all. In addition, there was no ceremony or significance when creating this weapon. To an Imperial Knight, a lightsaber was just a tool, one of many in fact. They were also trained in force combat, hand-to-hand, and vehicle combat as well. Imperial Knights were adept with many types of weaponry, not limited to blasters and explosives, something that the Jedi were staunchly against, but the Knights embraced. Their armor was made from the same material as Lord Vader's suit, which was yet another callback to the Empire's past, but not one of honor. Just as Vader had served as the Emperor's Force-sensitive servant, so too now did the Imperial Knights. However, they actually interwove bits of frick filament within their armor, making it uniquely lightsaber resistant. Not entirely immune of course, but it definitely allowed them to shrug off glancing blows, and gave them a better chance at surviving direct attacks. But the best part of their armor was actually the right gauntlet, which was made of pure cortosis. This would deactivate a lightsaber blade when it touched it, making an enemy's weapon useless for several minutes. The advanced technology that the galaxy had by the year 130 ABY also allowed the Knights to create gauntlets that weren't so brittle as Cortos's armor in the previous years was, and so it did actually offer them some protection. But the most important part of the Imperial Knights was that while they were loyal only to the Emperor, it was their duty to remove him from office should he ever become corrupted by the dark side. In this way, one can say that they were actually loyal not to the Emperor as an individual, but the ideal of what the Emperor should embody. This is the largest separation between themselves and the Royal Guards, besides of course their connection to the Force. With this in mind, they were also wholly devoted to the light side of the Force as well. Imperial Knights rejected the dark side in all of its manifestations, and they believed that it was their duty to protect their king and country against it. They were much like the Jedi in this way, but it's important to remember that despite their roots, they were indeed not Jedi. They did not dive deep into the mysteries of the Force, but they rather viewed the Force as a tool, an extremely powerful tool that needed to be respected, but still a tool nonetheless. According to Master Trey Asinde, the Imperial Knights served the Force by serving an empire that brought order and peace. Yet, they respected the Jedi, and they treated them as cousins. They acknowledged that it was the duty of a Jedi to watch over and protect the galaxy as a whole, while the job of the Imperial Knights was the same but for the Empire. The Jedi, however, saw the Imperial Knights more as gray. While they did not draw upon the dark side, they didn't necessarily adhere purely to the light side either. They obeyed the orders of the Emperor before literally anything, even the Force. And one part of their ideology emphasized the sentiment that lives of the few should always be sacrificed for the welfare of the many. It was this that made them ruthlessly pragmatic, and by and large, less compassionate than the Jedi. Despite this though, the Jedi did not view them as threats, or as even problems to other orders, and the two worked together towards a common goal, peace and security. And not only this, but the Knights knew the dangers of falling to the dark side, and believed that the Force should not be used out of anger or selfishness. Managing one's emotions and controlling fear in the face of adversity was a huge part of the Imperial Knight ideology. It was the strict mental discipline, the obedience to orders that made them less susceptible to the enticements of the dark side. Interestingly, it was this classic Imperial conditioning that kept them away from the stronger emotions that would typically draw on students of the Jedi. In this way, very few Imperial Knights ever fell to the dark side. Training as a Knight was pretty harsh, but it was fair. It was a lot more militaristic in structure, a lot different from the monastic way that the Jedi lived, though the Knights would adopt the same ranking system as the Jedi, only omitting the Initiate and the Padawan. They went from apprentice to Knight, and to Master, or Veteran. Recruitment within the Imperial Knights was limited to those who demonstrated loyalty to the Emperor, in addition to having to be Force sensitive. Upon being identified, a potential student would be drafted into the Imperial service to study under an assigned master, typically on the capital world of Bastion. And unlike the Jedi, there was no failing when one trained to become an Imperial Knight. All candidates became Knights because the Empire demanded absolute success. Their order did not have any sort of high council or any governing body, again making it much different from the Jedi, but one was promoted to a Knight or a Master, and the individual veterans were responsible for deeming their student worthy of becoming a Knight, and the Emperor himself was the one who elected those to become Masters. The Emperor again held all of the power. What I find to be most interesting though is that at some point, Force sensitivity awoke within the Fel bloodline. And when this occurred, and when the leaders of the Empire could touch the Force, each Emperor that ascended to the throne first served as an Imperial Knight, showing the high degree of honor that the position held. Roan Fel, the Emperor of the Legacy era, perpetually wore a more decorated version of the Knight's armor, and carried with him his own lightsaber. He was actually quite adept in the Force, and was a formidable fighter in lightsaber combat. His daughter also trained as an Imperial Knight, and she wielded a unique blue lightsaber. This neatly brings us into combat. The Imperial Knights were trained strictly for combat and not contemplation, this again being a major departure from their origins of the Jedi. They made extensive use of their armor and frequently found themselves dueling, especially against their greatest enemy, Darth Krayt's one Sith. Unlike the Jedi, the Imperial Knights were trained as a military, as they saw them learn the Force and how to transform themselves into weapons and shields alike. This made them warriors rather than negotiators of the Jedi, a fact that they never made an excuse for. As far as skill level in the lightsaber goes, they were considered to be equal to the level of a Jedi Knight. This of course was comparing them to the Jedi Knights of Luke Skywalker's future order. Luke's Jedi, who were already exceptionally powerful in their own right. Many have speculated that Luke even created the most powerful version of the Jedi. The Imperial Knights trained in the traditional lightsaber forms as well, but ended up developing 2 new unique forms and branches. Praetoria Vanille, which was more aggressive, and Praetoria Issue, which was more for defense. What made them different was that these forms were created with the idea of teamwork in mind, breaking away from the individual. Rather than being forms meant for a single user against one or more enemies, the Imperial Knights emphasized working alongside others, to fight as a single unit on the battlefield, a unifying force. In this way, this is a big departure from the way that the Jedi Order trained in lightsaber combat, and it made the Imperial Knights devastating. They trained to fight together, so while one Imperial Knight was pretty decent one-on-one, they became a truly terrifying force when they were fighting together. This was why the Imperial Knights almost always dispatched in duos or trios. Protecting each other's back was how they always stayed strong, and more importantly, how they stayed alive. In my opinion, this teamwork mentality was what kept them plentiful in the days of the One Sith, and it kept them alive during this dangerous purge and era in the galaxy. While Jedi were falling by the dozens, the Imperial Knights stood strong. The Knights are among some of the coolest inclusions in the lore. The Legacy era is filled with many really good ideas. Krayt himself is one of the most compelling villains in all of Legends continuity, and the One Sith are a great evolution of that order as well. In the days when the Jedi are scattered and terrified for their lives once again, it's cool to see a much younger Force-based order take their place temporarily. The merging of 2 former enemies is also fascinating. Whoever thought that the Jedi becoming a part of the Empire would create a pretty good one? My favorite piece of lore is that the Imperial Knights' job is to remove their Emperor from his throne if he ever shows signs of turning to the dark side. This is the line in the sand that all Imperial Knights are aware of, and I think it's a phenomenal idea for the lore. Although their duty was mainly to the Emperor Fel, the Knights really step up to the plate when it mattered most. What I love about the Knights more is what they stand for. They seem to have evolved from the Royal Guards, as they oppose everything about Palpatine and the old way. Darth Krayt would end up usurping Roan Fel on his throne and attempted to take over the entire Empire, but Fel managed to survive this assassination attempt. This eventually tears the Empire in half, with one side following Krayt and falling to the dark side, and the other remaining loyal to Fel. This, though, would renew the purpose of the Knights, which is to get Fel back on the throne at all costs. I really enjoyed the fact that every Emperor also serves as one of the Imperial Knights first. It gives them more respect when it comes to making decisions on behalf of the entire order, such as issuing orders and deciding who will become an Imperial Master. The Imperial Knights remind me a lot of the Knights of Zakul from a more bygone era. Both orders are structured around an emperor who is second to none. While we haven't looked at comparing the two just yet, I think that this would be a fascinating discussion. And if you would like to see something comparing these Grey Knight orders, then be sure to comment it down below, as Valkorian's Knights of Zakul sort of serve as a dark mirror to the Imperial Knights. So, if you've read the Legacy comics, tell us what you thought of the Imperial Knights and their story. And if this is your first time hearing about them, let us know your thoughts as well. Do you think that they're a good addition to the lore? But as always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. We really love seeing everyone come together on the lesser appreciated aspects of Star Wars lore like this. And until next time, my friends, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you're having an absolutely amazing day.